My name is Aaron Thacker. I'm the Communications Director. Afterwards, if you have any follow-on questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Today, we're going to have the Secretary speak to you, and we'll also have our Elections Director, Lisa Mara, who will be here. So at this moment, I'd like to bring up Secretary Adrian Fontes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking interest in our voters and our voting process here in Arizona. I'm going to run through some basic facts for you, and then we'll open it up to questions. State Election Director Lisa Mara is also here, who'll be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have. At this moment, we've got 4.36 million voters statewide in Arizona, which is about 120,000 more than we had in 2020. That turnout was about 80%. We're looking close to about that. But those predictions we will leave up to you all. We just want to make sure everyone who shows up today will vote. To that end, we have 657 polling locations all over our 15 counties, a variety of models, vote centers in many counties, precinct-based polling in just a couple of our counties. As you know, Arizona is a bottom-up state, and so the counties get to decide a lot of the specifics and particulars about the way they get to run their elections. If you have any questions about your voting location, you can go to arizona.vote. Again, that's arizona.vote for a lot of this information. As of about 6:20 this morning, all of our polling locations were open. We did have one issue of someone who forgot to bring a key to one of our locations in Maricopa County, which is very typical. We also had one location in Mojave County that lost power for a short period of time, but they were also open by the time we hit 6:20 a.m. We want to make sure to mention something right off the top, and that is this. Observers inside of our vote centers and polling locations are authorized only if they are credentialed by, one, the political parties, or number two, the Department of Justice. There are no other authorized folks other than voters and the election staff who are authorized to be inside of that 75-foot line and into the polling places. And we also want to mention very briefly, we've had, as of about half an hour ago, we've had 8 calls to our office. 4 of them were for folks who were electioneering within the 75-foot line. These are complaints. The other 4 were a variety of different sorts of questions. And so I can report that as far as I know right now, everything in the state of Arizona is running about as smoothly as it could be. Ongoing tabulation of ballots will continue, and it will not stop today. As many of you know, Arizona allows, unlike some states, Arizona allows for tabulation well before Election Day. So when you see those 8 p.m. numbers tonight, many of our counties are estimating that we'll be at about 55% of our total. That will not include Election Day voters, and it will not include those voters who turned in their early ballots today or within the last day or so. We want to make sure that folks understand that all of the ballots that have been tabulated go through a pretty rigorous process, and it runs in sort of 2 stages before the ballots even get tabulated. Number 1, they get scanned and received and signature verified. Now, this is a process where those folks doing the signature verification get trained by the same folks who train the FBI. It's a 27-point analysis of every single signature, and there's 3 layers of folks who actually look at each of these signatures. So that takes a while. And then they go to a series of folks in pairs who will take the envelope out of, or take the ballot out of the envelope. This is another process. And now that we have 2 pages worth of ballots here in each of those envelopes in Arizona, 9 of our counties anyway, it's going to take a little longer for all of that to happen. So please be patient with us. We know folks want results as quickly as possible, and we leave it to the media to make your projections whenever you like, but we will have our numbers, as always, 10 to 13 days after Election Day, because we want to get it right the first time. We're not just making projections. We're actually giving you the official numbers. After the election and after we're moving forward, there will be post-election audits that the counties will run. These hand count audits and or logic and accuracy tests ensure on the backside, as well as so much of what we've done on the front side, that we've got solid integrity in our elections. Now, Arizona did lower the threshold, excuse me, for recounts recently. It was 0.2% would take us to an automatic recount. In recent years, and again, I'll reiterate, without any statistical reasoning whatsoever, I think it was based on some people's feelings, we lowered that threshold to 0.5%. And what does that mean in a battleground state like Arizona? It's possible we will have to do a recount if some of these races are very close. Now, there's one in particular that has deadlines under the Electoral College Act, the ECRA, that office, if we go to a recount, we're going to have to deploy our election director and several teams around the state very quickly after the canvass so they can redo logic and accuracy tests on all of the tabulation equipment across the entire state before we can actually do the recount, because we will recertify the equipment again prior to that recount. And so, as with so many elections administrators, we hope that whatever the margins are, they're better than 0.5%, because I'm sure that nobody really wants to deal with that sort of thing. But if it happens, we are ready for it. Now, I want to make sure that folks get out there and vote. And remember, across many of our counties, and I'm speaking to our voters now, please understand you've got a 2-page long ballot. And in our biggest county, Maricopa, the average ballot has 78 different elections on those 2 pages, front and back. Please be prepared, have hopefully made your decisions before you get into that voting booth. You can bring in a piece of paper. Some folks will bring in a voter guide that they've received. You can use that just to transfer onto your actual ballot the choices that you've already studied and made. This will help the process go much more quickly. But for those people who may find themselves in line, the weather's beautiful in Metro Phoenix and I think across the state today. And so get to know your neighbors. Please exercise patience and make sure you get up and moving once you get in there. I think we've covered just about all of the specifics that I wanted to cover. Madam Director, do you have anything particular you want to share before we go to questions?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for encouraging people to get out and vote. Do have your patience. Do bring your sample ballot. Do ask as you're standing in line if you need a sample ballot, you need a publicity pamphlet. They have plenty of supplies for you. So make your voice heard today.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and do questions, and we'll come this direction, starting over here.
Secretary, you were saying yesterday that you were being briefed on the video that was circulating that has been suspected to be for misinformation. Do you have any updates on what you know about that?
Well, when I told you I was being briefed on the video, I was under a little bit of a misunderstanding. The briefing was a little more broad than just that, and so because of that, I can't really talk to you too much more about that. But the parts that I did get briefed on are the same things that were put out by the FBI and sort of that joint investigative task force. That's already been made public by those folks, so you can refer to that statement. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much, Secretary. Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. You mentioned 10 to 13 days. Is that the timeline you are expecting for all the votes here to be counted in Arizona this year? And what's your message to voters or candidates frustrated who might want to know results?
Well, 10 to 13 days is as usual, right? And that's for our official numbers. Now, if the media and the folks who do these sorts of things want to make their projections sooner, that's fine. Those are the projections from the media. Now, a lot of times people will get confused. If they hear it on the media, let's say our friends at the Associated Press or any of the other outlets make a call, they think, well, that's it. Well, that's never been the official number. The official number comes from the counties to the state, and then we put that out. That takes 10 to 13 days. We'll leave it to you all to talk about the other timelines, and that's really what I want to let the voters know. We are consistent in Arizona. We have very rigorous standards with which we analyze each of the ballots that's going to go through the process. With 2-page long ballots, it could take about the far end of that and maybe a little bit more. And what I have to say about that is this. If the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate had decided to work with the governor this year instead of shoving all these policy issues onto the voters and have 13 different initiatives and referenda that we'd have to deal with, I think we'd have a shorter ballot, and I think we'd get it a little quicker. So if you want to call President Peterson or Speaker Toma, let them know about your dissatisfaction for waiting too long for the results. Yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Statewide early vote numbers are still being compiled at this time. Early voting really is a very long and sort of a dynamic process. And when we give you numbers, we want to be exact as possible. We can come back with you later on in the day with some better estimates from across the state. But here's the thing. We really have a lot of teams that are working on a whole bunch of stuff right now. We don't want to bother them too much, but we, at this time, since it is election day, but we'll get you our best estimate on those numbers at our press conference later this afternoon. I think we might be scheduled for one.
And you can say that we had, across the state, record turnout for early voting this
Oh,
time.
yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right, Director. We've had record turnout here in Arizona, as we've seen in a lot of spaces. I think we beat 2020 already, which is a really great thing for our voters. It means that they're excited, they're participating heavily, and that's a very good thing. It's a lot of work, but it's work that we're happy to do. Yes, and then I'll come.
Mayor, NBC News. If there are problems that pop up at the vote centers throughout the day, do you plan on reporting those in any way?
When we do have problems, the first thing we want to do is identify the problem and try to get on the path to solving the problem. We don't want to really kind of bring a lot of attention to something if we want to make sure to get it solved for the voters first. They are our priority. That having been said, when we do identify issues, I think you've seen my administration constantly bring things forward that might be uncomfortable, and so we will be as transparent as possible through the day, but it really depends on the circumstance and how close we are to resolving those things. Really, it's about the voters who are voting in those locations more important than anything else, and so that's where we're going to keep our focus. Yes, sir.
CBS News. Wanted to ask you, you said, looks like so far so good as the voting. We have seen in other swing states today things like bomb threats being called in. Do you have any security concerns? Have you experienced anything like that today or in the days leading up to election day?
Well, we saw some stuff that was breaking. One of your colleagues here asked a question about that video earlier. We have seen a couple of other minor instances at this stage of the game, though we haven't seen anything that has come to my knowledge today. I don't think the directors heard anything else either, and we're usually close to the first ones to know. And so I don't have anything like that to report, and that's a really positive thing. Let's find some wood to knock on over here that's the way it stays for the rest of the day, not just for the safety of our voters, but all the folks who are out there working to make this election go well. And I'll go right behind you. There was a question.
Arizona's family. So about 45 minutes ago, the Navajo Nation president said some voting machines were down in Apache County and voters were being turned away. What do voters do in that scenario if that is in fact the case? And how often is voters being updated with problems at those locations?
So I can't confirm right now what is being reported apparently out of Apache County, but what I can say is this. If in fact you do have a circumstance as a voter at a polling location in Arizona, don't go away and don't let anybody outside of that space turn you away. And our poll workers should be hoping that folks can either stay there and vote or redirect them to a vote center nearby, which is the best protocol. But folks can always just hang tight for a while. Usually the elections officials can deal with issues pretty quickly. Oftentimes you'll get maybe a printer that has a jam, or they might run out of paper. We've got folks all over the state who are ready to troubleshoot these sorts of things. In fact, that's part of our regular planned protocol. So if we do, we'll definitely check into Apache County and what's going on up there. I don't have any personal knowledge to confirm what you're asking about, but we'll get there.
We can talk about serial planners. Election administrators are serial planners. So they have backup plans to the backup plans. So they have additional paper ballots. They also have accessible voting devices, so people can vote on those if they have a printer jam with a ballot on demand printer. So lots of various options, and every county has different setups.
Thank you. Yeah.
Adam from ABC 15, just wondering if you can clarify again, just with Mojave County, we were getting messages from viewers saying it was a computer glitch or something of that nature. You said it was a power outage there, and things are back up and running?
Yeah, our understanding was it was a power outage, and they got back up by about 6:20 this morning. I got the text message once it got down the chain to me a little after 6:30 this morning that we were 100% open, and that came from the ACTIC, one of our fusion centers that has all that information. So I think we're in good shape. Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell us in what county was the problem with the key forgotten, and also could you explain what happened with this video?
Yeah, the county that had the key that got forgotten was right here in Maricopa County. They've got several hundred vote centers. In fact, when I was the Maricopa County recorder, we had one, literally the church lady didn't wake up that day and someone had to go knock on her door to get the key. In fact, we had another circumstance where the golf school that we had leased our space from got foreclosed on the night before. The landlord changed the locks and we couldn't get in. So these things happen, right? And it's not unusual. We eventually will make sure that we're taking care of our voters. What was the second part of your question? Oh, the video, yeah. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, a video popped up on the internet, and it was, I think I called it BS to one of the local stations. I won't use the full word here. Purporting to be someone who had worked in my office, claiming all these other kind of instances of like that I was actually doing something nefarious, and the person interviewing this other person was speaking with a very heavy Russian accent. Again, the FBI and their partners in the intelligence area have put out a very clear statement on that that describes it a bit, and so we're going to leave it in their hands at this time, but it's been widely sort of thrown under the bus as a fake on the internet, so it's just another one of those attempts, I think, that we have from foreign actors to try to influence our elections and make people lose faith in the work that we do.
Okay, and lastly, can I just ask about the list, the famous list,
The famous list? Yeah, we talked about that extensively yesterday. We turned over, according to the court order that I opposed, that list of names and personal identifying information of approximately 218,000 voters in Arizona. I did not want to turn that over. I was supported by some folks who are former law enforcement folks who understand the possible risks that releasing those names and that information would foist upon voters. And what we asked voters to do was go to my.arizona.vote to check and see, A, if they were on the list, and number two, we asked anybody who might be on the list to hold off on contacting their county recorders to wait. We're going to be contacting those voters after this election because the state Supreme Court issued an order that said that these folks were eligible to vote in every election. We're standing under that order still, and I very much hope that the folks to whom we gave these names and this identifying information will hold off on trying to contact or harass any of these voters until well after this election. We're going to get this issue resolved and bring all those folks into compliance with the letter of the law. Yes?
My name is Kenta. I'm with TBS, Japanese media outlet. How do you want the people of Arizona to react when they got to know the results?
How do I want them to react?
Yeah.
Well, you know, winners are going to be happy and the losers can try again better next time. I mean, that's just the way American elections work. I'm hoping that part of that reaction is a deep sense of gratitude for all of the election workers out there. These folks who are, for example, here at Burton Barr Library working very long hours. I mean, our folks just today will probably have arrived somewhere around 5 o'clock in the morning. They're not going to get out of there until maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's a very long day. And many of these folks have been working for a month or more, and this isn't their permanent job. So I hope voters will have a sense of gratitude when they see these results towards the folks who work hard to preserve their constitutional rights. Let's go to the back here.
Bloomberg News, are you in communication with any of the counties that have previously been skeptical of the election results, election officials in Cochise County, and what is your message for some of those officials that have previously had issues with canvassing the election?
Well, that's really one of the most interesting parts about this work, because we work day in and day out with all of the counties and all of those folks. You know, whether some of these folks feel one way politically and that bleeds into their jobs sometimes or not, for the most part, I think across Arizona, pretty much everybody we know in election administration can separate their opinion from their duty. You know, you've got standing before you a bipartisan team. Director Mara is a lifelong Republican. You should see the wonderful decorations in her office celebrating Republican presidencies and so forth. And I am an unabashed Democrat. That's our opinion, right? But together we have a duty to all of Arizona's voters. And this is the way we sort of joyfully and sometimes a little playfully move through this. You know, we can be adults. We can be grown-ups. We can have those political differences and still do the fundamental stuff right for our voters. And I think that Arizona has always stood for that in just about every election space. So do we have differences of opinion? You bet. But our duty is primarily to the voters, and I think most of the time, in fact, almost all the time, that duty gets fulfilled well. I saw a hand over here.
So there were your posts. You talked about that list release yesterday. Did that cause any I know there was the message on the website. Did that cause any immediate confusion from voters? Did you receive any emails so far having to clarify with people that you are still able to vote?
Lisa, do you know of any?
I am not aware of an overwhelming number of people. We've had phone calls, we've had emails. We're directing people to the my.arizona.vote website to check their status. County recorders have that list, but again, we're asking for a little patience today because again, election officials are running today's election. So we'll get that squared away, but I'm not aware of any enormous amount of calls or emails.
Yeah. The timing of the order couldn't have been less fortunate for our election administrators. Yes, and then I'll come over here.
Justin with 12 News. Back in 2016, there was concern that Russia hacked our voting system. Have you seen any concerns like that this year? And can you talk about the security of our software?
So the security of our software is way better than it was in 2016, and we didn't have any real evidence of that happening here in Arizona in 2016. That was a bit of misinformation, disinformation. And back in 2016, boy, those were much more innocent days, if you will. We've worked really, really hard, particularly over the last year and a half since I took this office, to lock down not only our systems at the Secretary of State's office, but we've deployed resources across the entire state, sending out from CISA, for example, personal security agents, I think they're personnel security agents and cybersecurity agents, to survey each one of our counties. And we gathered that information up and then went to try to find the resources to help those counties improve their systems. So it's not just the cyber stuff, the networking stuff, the firewalls, but it's also some of the physical security for our folks and our facilities that we've been working on. We're in a very, very different place, and I can tell you our elections have never been more secure and never been more accountable. Now, do we get pinged by foreign actors? All the time. All the time. In fact, I've got the National Guard working to monitor our computer systems 24/7, and it was the Secretary of State's office that was first to discover in Arizona the recent, well, it wasn't an attack, that software glitch that happened and hit global networks across with one of the firewall software systems that was out there. So we're very, very vigilant. Some folks say we go a little over the top, but better safe than sorry, says this old Marine. Yes, ma'am.
Aaron Brock, The Economist. Regarding election observers, have you heard anything about people without credentials at one location or the tabulation center? Or is that something that you're worried about throughout the day?
What have you heard? Yeah, why don't you take that one?
So we worry about everything all the time, but counties are well aware of, and the law is very clear. Authorized political party observers that have to be credentialed, and Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is here visiting 4 counties. The Department of Justice always send observers. So any other groups are just not official observers. They're not allowed into the polling locations. We are getting a few reports that there are some groups, and I say groups lightly, 2 or 3 people that say they're observers, but they can't go within that 75-foot line.
One other thing regarding the 75-foot line that I think is important, we know there's a lot of folks out there, and I'm talking to voters now, who are really interested and really proud of the fact that you're voting, and sometimes you want to memorialize this moment and all that good stuff. Please understand, it's against the law to be photographing or recording inside of your polling places. And so if you want to memorialize the moment, get outside the 75-foot line, take your selfie, and then go in and vote. Not only do we want to protect the process, but the privacy of the other voters and our staff that are engaged in this process. It is a public process, but we do want to maintain some order in there. So thanks for asking that question about our polling places. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's one of the great things about Arizona. We are bottom up, and so it's the counties that are really charged with all of this. We give them a lift whenever we can. And we really actually haven't had that many issues this year. In fact, even with the loss of so many elections officials over the last couple of years, folks are coming to us understanding the nature of the work, understanding the possible issues that can arise with that, eyes wide open, and they're motivated to do good stuff.
Yeah, Arizona, people are passionate about elections here. And so I'm not aware of any counties really having any difficulty filling poll worker spots. And anybody who's a first-time poll worker, it becomes addicting. And then they just come back year after year.
All right, we'll do one or two more real quick, and then they're going to swoop me out of here. As soon as I say that, nobody raises their hand. That's awesome. Okay, we'll call it for this morning. If something does arise, however, I want to let everybody know our communication department will contact you all, and we will assemble as quickly as possible to make sure that we get as much information out to you as we can. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great morning, and make sure you're in line and have your decisions ready to go if you're a voter out there. Thanks, everybody.
You mentioned you may have another press conference, or you are having another one?
I'll let Aaron take care of that.
We'll do some updates throughout the day.